Planning Commission for the City of Lowell for our regular meeting on Monday, July 9th, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sue, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradmeyer. Here. Commissioner Cadwalder.
Here.
Commissioner Chambers.
Here.
Commissioner Ellis.
Here.
Commissioner Plank.
Here.
Commissioner Schraven. Here. And Chair Barker.
Here. Thank you. Can I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve. I'll support.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Agenda stands approved. And can I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, June 11th, 2018, our regular meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve our minutes of our last meeting.
Second.
And discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. The minutes stand approved as accepted as written. Are there any public comments and communications concerning items not on the agenda?
I think he's running in here.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Sir, we just asked for any public comments if they're not on the agenda. No public, thank you. There is no old business at this point, so we go on to our new business, which is the King Milling Site Plan Review. I see, Jim, you're here. Would you please come on up and give us just a brief overview of what you want to do?
Sure. I think you all have some plans and you can kind of see a little bit what that is the site plan. And actually, we had some prints on the building construction. But I think a lot of you know we've been expanding and put in more grain storage and put another flour mill in 2013. And along with that growth, we see a need for faster and better packaging and more warehouse space. Most of our business is bulk, going out in bulk trucks, but we do package a fair amount of flour, and that's where we like to have this new warehouse to house and store the flour as well. And it's a building that could be built anywhere, but we'd like to build it here. I think the proximity and doing this in Lowell would be good for the community and so on. It, as you can see, is about 30,000 square feet, and within that is some fairly sophisticated packaging machinery that will pack the flour and we'll warehouse it there. And then those 4 loading dock doors that will be used to load the trucks that will carry the flour out. That's kind of in a nutshell the project. Certainly happy to answer any questions. I know that all the information went to, I assume you're with Williams and Williams, right? Yes, for their review. And we have, of course, submitted to DEQ we're in the floodplain, so anything we do, it goes to DEQ, anything we build anywhere. So they're reviewing all of those issues. And then, of course, a building permit will need to be applied for, and we're pretty close to full construction drawings that can be submitted for the building permit. But then this is sort of the first step, of course, is the site plan, and do we meet the zoning codes? And I know there's going to be an issue that kind of we're going to have some discussion about. Kendall Beck is also here, our planning firm, Rosine and Associates. But I know that the zoning requires a certain amount of shrubbery per square foot or lineal foot of frontage, or however that works, and so many trees. And we are very much against shrubbery. We're against low plantings that are harborage for rodents and other small burrowing animals is not, it's not a good thing in our environment, any food manufacturing plant building. So, you know, our request is going to be to stick with trees and to kind of do, I think, as the plans have been submitted, but we'd be happy to.
Thank you. And was it Kendall?
Yes.
Kendall, would you like to say a few words before we get started here? And then we'll probably be calling on both, one or the other, or both, as we go through the process here. So just want to have a few words and get to know you. Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Jim. As Jim mentioned, I'm with Rosina Associates. I'm filling in for Paul Henderson, who put the plans together and has had several opportunities to communicate with you and your staff. As Jim mentioned, DEQ permit has been submitted. We are working through that process with them. There is about a 500 cubic yard cut on the site ultimately, just short of 500 cubic yards, so we do not need to get into any compensatory cuts. I know the discussion mentioned that we may have to do some compensatory cuts at a local park or something that's been done previously. The way the plan is laid out, we do not need to do that, or we're not planning on doing that. Preliminary grading has been put into the site. I think it's mentioned that they're looking for more spot grades, more elevations, and as Jim mentioned, we're working on finishing up construction plans, which will go through all those issues, but we're really looking for that zoning approval right now, and that go ahead to get into and finish up that next phase. There's some comments about stormwater. I'm going to address those for a second. We are in the floodplain. The Kent County Health Drain Commission typically, when you're repairing like this, they want the stormwater to leave the site and get into the water course as quick as possible, but they do seek water quality improvements, which you'll note on the plan in the southeast corner. There's a small depression there where all site water is being channeled prior to being discharged back into an existing outlet that goes into the Flat River. So the plan is designed and set up to really try to minimize any impacts on the natural resources that are here already, but protect them by doing smart development on the site. So if there's more questions about that, I'll be happy to answer that. There was one also about perforated pipe and contaminants on the site. Those issues are being reviewed as we're finishing up design and making sure clearly we don't want to promote infiltration on a contaminated site and potentially push contaminants somewhere else. So that's being looked at and make sure we take care of those issues. There's public water, public sewer right in the Broadway street right away. We're looking at connecting to those. Again, as we go through final construction permits and drawings, we'll make sure we have the right connections in those situations that you guys would like to have those. Jim, you mentioned the landscaping already. Clearly there's a inherent need in the project that we're trying to address and work within the rules. Stay true to the project, and then the site lighting. There is a lighting package that's put in there to meet your ordinances, downward shoebox cutoff lighting to minimize any potential discharge off-site to neighbors. With that, I appreciate the time, and we're here to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Kendall. Appreciate it. Andy, you want to lead us through the charge, and then we'll, as we go through here, obviously, commissioners feel free to ask questions at any given time. I don't always look back at you guys very often, so please feel free to just cut in and ask any questions at any given time, okay? Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we'll just kind of walk through the report that we prepared last week for this site. We have a handful of observations for you guys to discuss and just kind of give you our impression on compliance or lack thereof with the zoning ordinance. The first one that we always look at is the dimensional requirements, so setbacks, building height, things like that. The first thing that you'll notice when you flip through the site elevation drawings and the building design is that a portion of this building is going to be pretty tall, 100 feet or so. Obviously, in Lowell, we don't allow any buildings to be taller than 35 feet, except that we do make exceptions for grain bins, grain elevators, silos, things of that nature. So,
Question before we get too far here.
yes.
How tall are the current silos there?
Well, the ones that we approved, was that 2 years ago, are 87 feet, I think. The two bins that are over
They're 135 feet to
135.
the peak.
to the peak.
And there's 5 right next to this project, 5 older ones, I believe.
They're about 100 feet.
About 100 feet, so it would be similar in size to
Yeah,
this.
this is-
Yes.
I'm just trying to get a ballpark.
Right, yeah, I mean, visually, it's not gonna be something that really sticks out, really strongly compared to what's there currently. It's all of a similar scale.
Okay, thank you.
There's also a modular block wall along the property line that's kind of adjacent to the flat river. It kind of varies in height, it looks like, based on site elevation drawings, but generally is, 3 feet or less in height. Do you have any questions about that? I wasn't sure what purpose, is that just for retaining wall, or what does that do exactly?
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out why you were doing a step-down block retaining wall, or what you were actually, what that was, or why it has to be a step-down.
As I understand it, it's to allow for that drive to grade around the backside of the new building and minimize the impact into that riparian area, that natural area that's on the east side of the property.
So from north to south along the river, then it's gonna go tall from the south side and shrink down towards the north, but that turn's gonna be made there on the opposite side of the detention pond, right?
Yeah, the maximum height was about 3 or 4 feet.
Good.
Other comments on the review that we had, lighting, they already touched on. The lighting looks fine. We require downward facing lights, and that's pretty easy to do nowadays, and they've done that. The zoning ordinance requires 16 spaces, and they're proposed 28, which is well in excess of that. They haven't proposed any signage. I do want to talk about landscaping. If you recall, was it maybe a year ago, or maybe less than that, when we redid the general provision chapter of the zoning ordinance, we spent quite a bit of time talking about landscaping, and in some areas we reduced the requirements for parking lot trees and street trees and frontage landscaping and things like that. And we also built some language into the ordinance that allows for the planning commission to modify the requirements of that section if it's demonstrated by the applicant that there's a need, or that full compliance with the landscaping requirements isn't necessary, isn't desirable, doesn't further the intent of the ordinance. In this case, I tend to agree with the applicant. They have provided some landscaping. In fact, they haven't proposed nothing. But this is a kind of an industrial area. There's, King Milling has buildings and things all around it on all sides of the property almost, except to the south. So I am fine with their landscaping as proposed, in my opinion. If you guys want to require additional tree plantings or something like that, you can, but I don't know that it serves a great purpose at this point. I mean, there's
I'm
certainly
just
some.
wondering about along the riverside instead of along the Broadway side, doing some plans along there. I mean, that, a lot of places wherever you have a body of water, that's considered your front yard. So, I guess my point is 20, 30 years from now, when people are floating down the flat river or fishing out there, what are we looking at? Just a brick wall, or is that a good place? Is it even possible to put some kind of trees or whatever? I'm not sure that that's even a possibility, but I'd like to explore that at least.
We talked about the compensating cut. So if we brought this up because the previous King Milling site plan that we did a couple years ago, as well as the Schneider Manor apartment building that we did maybe a year ago, if you, I think, filling more than 300 cubic yards or something like that, you require, the DEQ requires a compensating cut because they're in the floodplain. If they're not filling more than that, or in this case, if it's going to ultimately be less than that or less entirely, then that's not necessary. Because they're in the floodplain, a DEQ permit is still necessary, as he mentioned, so that's something that we can deal with as a condition of approval. But if no compensating cut is necessary, then that obviously makes it a lot easier for the city to process moving forward, because the compensating cut requires
Who
permission
determines
from-
that? The DEQ?
What?
If they have more than
The
three?
DEQ, yes.
They determine it?
Yes.
Okay.
So within the ordinance, there are a handful of standards, site plan review standards. There's 6 of them, I think, that we review as a matter of process for every site plan application. If we find that all those standards are satisfied, then the planning commission can approve the site plan. So what we've done in the past, Mr. Chairman, is just kind of go through these one at a time and find if there's consensus amongst the planning commission for each of these standards. So I'll just read them, and then I guess I'll throw them over to you, and you guys can talk about them with, I mean, I have a few comments on each of them, and I can certainly give you my thoughts as well.
Okay.
The first standard is that the uses proposed will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. Uses and structures located on the site shall be planned to take into account topography, size of the property, the uses on adjoining property, and the relationship and size of the buildings to the site. The site shall be developed so as not to impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property for use permitted in this ordinance. My thoughts on this site is that it's fairly similar to, in terms of use and size of the buildings as the neighboring parcels are. It's zoned industrial, the surrounding properties are zoned industrial except for the south, which is the city-owned parcel. But you know, in my view, I found that the standard was met, and so I guess we'll see if the planning commission agrees with me.
Okay. Planning commission, would it be your pleasure that we vote on each one of these as he reads them and then kind of go from there? We can always come back for conditions and things of that nature.
Sure, did you, when you said you wanted to talk about the repairing your plans, and all that, is that coming up later, or?
Yeah, I think that'll come up later in the, one of the natural features down in D. Yeah. So the first one then is the public health and safety and welfare, and are they being used to adjoining properties as well? Are they being developed that way? So the question there is whether or not we would approve this standard. Any discussion at all? Any questions at all? Okay, then all in favor of approving the review standard? Let's do this by a voice vote, please. Sue?
Commissioner Brownmeyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Cadwalder,
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis,
Yes.
Commissioner Plank,
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven,
Yes.
and Chair Barker.
Yes. Thank you.
Item B, safe, convenient, uncongested, and well-defined vehicular and pedestrian circulation shall be provided for ingress/egress points and within the site. Drives, streets, and other circulation routes shall be designed to promote safe and efficient traffic operations within the site and at ingress/egress points. You know, as far as vehicular circulation goes, it's pretty clear on the site. There's just a kind of a driveway that loops around the site. It provides parking on the east and west and connects to Broadway, I think, in 2 different locations. Plus, there's the loading dock there that has room for 4 trucks. I'm not particularly concerned here about you know, a tremendous amount of pedestrians, just because it's not a heavily pedestrian traveled area.
Does this also go through DPW and fire and people like that?
Yeah, so what we do is after the planning commission, if it makes a positive decision tonight with conditions, one of those conditions includes review by other agencies, and so there's a form that gets circulated around where Power and Light, DPW, Fire Department, me, everyone looks at it to make sure that they've satisfied all their conditions, and if there are additional requirements or something like that that need to be met, or changes to the plan that need to be made to satisfy those, then we can do that at that time for the building permit issue.
Commissioners, any other questions of either Andy or the applicants?
Just, I assume as part of that evaluation, with understanding that there's 4 semi-loading docks, and that this is a warehousing operation, that would be like a more continuous circulation of semi-traffic in and out, rather than something that's more seasonal when things come in and out. So is that like part of the evaluation process, like, can we handle that volume of
trucks?
traffic in and out of, or if it goes out onto Broadway Street, or is it going to require other?
Good question.
planning?
Kendall, I would suspect, maybe, or Jim, either one. How do you envision these trucks coming in and out and doing all those kinds of things? And do you have any idea of number of trucks per day, or 7 days a week? What's kind of the vision there?
Yeah, first of all, it's all traffic.
Please, up here, sorry. Gotta get Chantilly.
It's all traffic that exists now. So we're loading bag loads of product daily. Could be 5 loads in a day. And trucks are coming in, backing in, right near this site and leaving. So it's just going to switch that from where we're doing it now down to this warehouse. Hopefully in time we can grow the business a little bit and do more of it, but I'd just say somewhere around 5 a day.
Is it
Which is the
just,
same thing as going through it now.
Right. Is that 7 days a week, by the way?
Not the bag product, yeah.
Okay.
It's more of a 5-day.
5 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
would this site lessen the traffic off Main Street? Or is it, I'm trying to see flow of it.
Well, currently, as you know, there's a new parking lot going in there at Main and Broadway, which will stop all the traffic. So everything for King Milling Company is going to become in at Bowes Road and out at Bowes Road. So all the Main Street stuff is going to go away.
We have a gate that's going to be going across there to shut down traffic. And then during certain events, I'm assuming like during wheat harvest, when you're really busy, the gate will open up for another access.
No, we're hoping even during wheat harvest, it's going to the south. The issues will be flooding, because it floods heavily on the south, right? So if we can't get through 4 feet of water, then we're going to have to go through Main Street, so then we pull those gates out.
Right.
The other issue, at least for the next few years, is the 4-H fair. When that's on, we can't drive through the fair, so we have to go out to Main. But once the fair is gone, then the only issue should really become flooding.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
Is there any thought of doing anything over here?
as in,
Eliminating that, moving everything over to the other side of the river, or? No.
maybe in the
just trying to
future, maybe in the future.
Save a lot of runs back and forth.
Yeah.
Is this a gravel parking lot to the south of the building along Broadway? It says gravel lot. It's kind of got a swished arrow in it.
And then kind of the old storage area for the old Michigan wire. Side yard.
That's right.
Yeah, that south arm that kind of sticks down
I
there.
guess, but
Yeah, that's not part of this. That stays just as it is, it's gravel.
Yeah.
So in essence, the new building creates a better flow as far as reducing traffic on Main
It
Street,
should, it should.
which would be, I think, our concern more than anything.
Yeah, I was just curious if there's where that falls in the
Yeah.
plan. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not up to us at this point, but just
Yeah.
wondering if that. And then if you are diverting everything off of Main and you have regular semi-traffic out on Broadway, I don't know what that does to when people are trying to come in and out at rush hour times or whatever. I assume most of your traffic flow would be midday, and it wouldn't really be big deal, but
Most of it.
it's already kind of malfunctioned.
Yeah, and you would also think that a possible light on Bose,
Yeah.
Bose or that intersection
Yeah.
would, in Hudson would make some sense. I mean, at some point, if there's enough traffic flow there to create that problem, because right now it's a problem only at 5 o'clock at night, frankly.
Well, there's a traffic light going in there in August.
Oh, there is?
So it's not already scheduled.
At Bose Road.
Good, okay. So
There
that
you go.
also helps, yeah. Okay. Any other questions on B? Having said that, then, everybody, or if we can take a voice vote again on the review standard B, the safe, convenient, uncongested circulation of traffic. Sue, voice vote?
Commissioner Breimeyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven?
Yes.
And Chair Barker?
Yes, thank you. Andy, see?
Item C, the arrangement of public or private vehicular and pedestrian connections to existing or planned streets in the area shall be planned to provide a safe and efficient circulation system for traffic within the city of Lowell. This is somewhat similar to the previous standard that talked about safe, convenient, and well-defined circulation. It's very similar to that. We talked about the circulation pattern as it is. There is one sidewalk proposed along Broadway. And, you know, overall, in the same vein as item B, I think the standard is also satisfied for many of the same reasons.
Any discussion on C? And no discussions, all in favor of saying okay to the site plan review standard C. Sue, voice vote, please.
Commissioner Breimeyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven?
Yes.
And Chair Barker?
Yes. Andy, D.
Removal or alteration of significant natural features shall be restricted to those areas which are reasonably necessary to develop the site in accordance with requirements of this ordinance. Planning Commission requires that approved landscaping buffers and green belts be continuously maintained to ensure that proposed uses will be adequately buffered from one another and from surrounding public and private property. Our comments on the site mostly related to the DEQ compensating pet. However, given the previous discussion, I think if you guys want to talk about landscaping, I found that generally the landscaping was sufficient, although you were asking about.
Well, I'm asking about the river because
Yeah.
the river is the public side of the equation. The other side is looking at the silos and bins and offices and things of that nature, and a road that's basically cut off from the general public for the most part, or certainly will be in 2 years. What I'm thinking is the Flat River is going to be continuing to be developed. You're going to have possibly a bike or path trail coming through on the other side of the river. There's obviously the market is there now. There's a parking spot. People are fishing down there already right now. And the question becomes, sooner or later, that portion of it is going to be developed for public use to pass by. And my concern is that what's that going to look like? I mean, what's the vision for that? And is there room for putting some landscape back on that side of the, instead of concrete fence maybe? I don't know. I'm raising the question.
Skip.
Just like to address that a little bit, Bruce.
Sure.
Currently, I mean, if you walk down there, it's pretty well tree covered as it
Correct.
comes. There's a lot of vegetation there.
Right.
And we're not disrupting that.
Right.
We're going to be west of that with what we're doing. So I don't know if we would want to add more to that or
Yeah, because you got an existing tree line all the way down.
there. Yeah, it's all
Down the river.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
from the railroad trestle down,
Okay.
it's all trees.
Yeah, looking at the area, that would be the only thing is if that was gonna get, like DEQ would probably raise the stink if you were ripping out a bunch of repairing stuff in.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if they have an issue with you putting more stuff in.
Yeah, you're probably,
Because it's kind of a floodway.
Okay. Okay.
but But it's, yeah, it's definitely like,
Yeah, it's got a ton of trees all the way down
Yeah.
through there.
as long as that stays, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Any other questions on D?
I got one, Bruce.
Yeah.
The ball diamonds there, you're gonna be putting a fence up. Is it gonna be a privacy fence, 6-foot fence, chain link fence?
It's an existing fence.
Oh, it's already there.
So, yeah, they'll still use the same drive to the ball field probably.
Right.
Any other questions on D? All in favor of accepting the review standard D, please say yes. Sue, voice vote again?
Commissioner Breimeyer? Yes. Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven?
Yes.
And Chair Barker?
Yes.
Thank you. E.
Item E states that satisfactory assurances shall be provided that the requirements of all other applicable ordinances, codes, and requirements of the city of Lowell will be met. At this point, I have no reason to think they wouldn't. It's developed here for a number of years, and as a further condition of approval, like we do with everything, we require ongoing maintenance of all permits and compliance with all ordinances and codes and so forth.
Any questions, commissioners? Having no questions, all in favor, please say yes. Sue, voice vote?
Commissioner Breimeyer? Yes. Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven?
Yes.
And Chair Barker?
Yes. F, please, Andy?
Item F, the general purposes and spirit of this ordinance and the comprehensive plan of the city of Lowell shall be maintained. Within the master plan, it indicates that this property is within an industrial future land use designation, so I feel it's consistent with what's been planned for this area. The language in the ordinance specifically states that it's designed for areas planned for industrial land uses that are intended to accommodate continual industrial uses. This kind of fits right in with a continual industrial use. It's been there for a while and will be there for a while. And so we feel like it is also consistent with the master plan.
Questions? Commissioners? Again, all in favor then, please say yes. With Sue, a roll call vote.
Commissioner Breimeyer? Yes. Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven?
Yes.
And Chair Barker?
Yes. Thank you. Engineering review.
Yeah, so we did have our engineering staff look at this. You'll see this is a little bit longer list of questions and comments than we typically have in our reports. That's not to say that the site design engineers here did anything unsatisfactory. There's just a lot of questions remaining that will come out when they do their construction drawings. I spoke with engineering staff at our office today. They don't have any significant concerns or anything that would preclude you guys from approving this this evening with conditions. Obviously, they would include submittal of the required information and making sure that they are complying with the city engineer's requirements and stipulations. So most of this stuff is just additional information that has not yet been provided. There was nothing that they felt was, shockingly incorrect or inaccurate or would be problematic. But as a matter of the review process, we need to, we review and make sure that everything is, material and specifications and everything are as they should be. And I believe that they will be once those things are completed. So I know, Kendall mentioned briefly, a few things about stormwater and about the perforated pipe and roof drains and some of these things that are mentioned here. That's all stuff that can be dealt with moving forward. I don't think there's enough here for the planning commission to not make a decision on it based on our conversations.
Andy, one real quick question. There's a note that the site had a previous industrial use, and the question is if there's industrial waste and things of that nature. Who discovers that? How is that handled? If you just let us know. Yes.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know for sure. I think when in the DEQ's review that would come out, if there's an issue there, I think this was, Michigan Wire on this previously. I don't know what the process is. I don't know if anything is there. There's not anything known at this time. But a lot of times when there's an industrial use that's being a site that's being redeveloped, that's something that they will often flag and just say, we pay special attention to this just in case there's something going on. We don't know of anything at this time, but certainly.
Tony?
We can address that a second.
Oh, yeah.
Just before we purchased that property, it had a full environmental down. Fishbeck, Thompson, Carney, Hubert did the full assay of the site. And one thing that was discovered there was Michigan Wire had a diesel fuel tank. It was put in a long time ago, and actually had been taken out quite a number of years ago. It had leaked. And so that was remediated. There was a significant amount of digging and removal, and they oversaw all of it, and soils were, done away with as they had to be. And so that was all cleaned up. That was all submitted to DEQ, all the reports on that. DEQ has all the environmentals on that site. So
Good.
it's pretty good.
I'm just curious as to how that process works, so never had it happen before. Okay. You want to go over water, or you did go over the water and sanitary review as well?
Yep.
Is there anything of concern then for the commissioners for the engineering review? I'm certainly not an engineer, and I'm more than willing to leave that portion of it up to the experts, but is there any questions that the commissioners have? Okay. Anthony, you want to go on to the recommendation then?
Yes, so we did recommend approval of the site plan, and primarily that's because, with us not having to work out the issues with any kind of complicating, that just makes everything much simpler. So we suggested, we stated here, if the commission is inclined to approve the application, we have 6 conditions or so. Several of them, numbers 2, 3, and 4, are conditions we add on everything. Number 1, I guess, is about landscaping. I don't know if you're comfortable with what's proposed now, we can strike number 1 in its entirety. There's consensus on that. Number 5 revolves around the compensating cut, which is not going to need to occur. And then item 6 just states that the applicant will need to provide the additional information outlined in this memo for approval by the DPW and city engineer. The DPW will look at a lot of the water and sewer connections, cuts that go into making that connection. Our staff will primarily focus on drainage, stormwater, and things like that. So I guess we could probably eliminate condition number 1 and possibly condition number 5. The others I would suggest leaving in as conditions of approval. Everything else on the site I thought looked fine. I did not have any major concerns with the layout. It satisfies all of your approval criteria, meets your dimensional standards, and so I believe that you can approve it.
I got one. The Ottawa Street, the vacated lot that's going to be sitting there, with the sidewalk going in, a 5-foot sidewalk, that's a gravel now. There's no fencing there, correct?
Currently, no.
Okay. I guess the green space stuff, I know you're not developing that, but I don't know, maybe there's some way we can put something into that empty space, because fair time, people do walk into town. There are times of year that people are going to be using that sidewalk, and it would just be a little bit nicer to see something there than to see a parking lot full of, you know, whatever.
Marty, what's the length of that? Right.
This one?
Yeah.
That's 329.20 feet.
And that's the length of the sidewalk?
No, well, that's about the length of what that site is. The sidewalk's actually gonna run from the tracks all the way down to the corner of that property.
Okay, so it's
Right there where
Right.
that little road is, it goes back to Muldoon.
Yeah. So what are you recommending as far as greenery goes in that area? You want to leave it up to the applicant to figure that out?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you? I'm fine with that. Clean it up,
Yeah.
in essence, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Instead of just a start piece. Okay. Any other thoughts, commissioners? Having said that, then I'll make the motion that we accept the site plan review for King Milling Company with the following conditions. Conditions as they were listed, number 2, 3, and 4, and 6. And then we'll add, which in essence would be number 5, which would be the recommendation that they put in clean up, spruce up, look up, nice up, however you want to phrase that. That stretch along the barren land and the sidewalk area and that sort of that area there. Just a different look at it. It doesn't have to be shrubs. It could be, you know, a lot of different things, but just some kind of beautification effort. And that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I can second it.
And discussion now. Hearing no discussion, we'll take, oh, Tony, go ahead.
At the ball diamonds and practice fields, the longevity, how long, I know the fair is going to be moving in a couple of years. Is there any future plans for that space back there? I mean, before we have someone landscape all this area and then 2 years later, nothing's there.
We're going to be looking at doing a feasibility study for future use of that site here, hopefully sometime in the next 6 months to a year.
And we're not looking at construction. What timeframe? Okay.
We think it can break ground this fall
Okay.
and then be completed by, say, end of March, April.
So at that point, that process could be the green or beautification or whatever it's going to be. We should be through the process of what the city's looking at there, so that could be done in cooperation with it. I don't think it's punitive. I think the nature here is to make it look like a nice place,
I agree.
and I think that's kind of the object for it. So, okay. Any other questions? Sue, voice vote then?
Commissioner Breimeyer? Yes. Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrabbin? Yes. And Chair Barker?
Yes. Thank you. You have your site plan review okay. So you can start your engineering studies and all the other studies that have to be done. Thank you. Thank you. Going back to our new business, we have the zoning ordinance amendments, and on the next to the last page, Andy has come up with a schedule for our zoning ordinance amendments. As everybody knows, we've been working on redoing the zoning ordinance in its whole, and in our quest, we've been moving along, and what we're trying to do desperately is to give the council 3 or 4 chapters at a time instead of overloading them with the whole thing at one time. So we've worked our way through a number of things. Now we're down to the district's site plan review, PUD, and definitions. So Andy's kind of drawn up a schedule here for us, and Andy, you want to say a few words and then we'll figure it out?
Yeah, so this is, we provided one of these reports or memos to you guys before we did parking and signs a few months ago. So as you mentioned, Bruce, there's really not a lot left to do. Kind of district standards, it's a lot of chapters, but it's not a lot of pages. I mean, each district chapter is only 2 pages for the most part. There are a couple that are a little bit longer. This would include basically reviewing the regulations for each district. So, for example, Chapter 5 is your suburban residential zoning district. We would look at the setbacks, make sure they make sense, lot area, lot coverage numbers, the list of permitted and special land uses in each district. There might be required modifications that we would need to make to that to accommodate zoning enabling act requirements and things like that. And when we did our audit a couple of years ago of the zoning ordinance, there are some provisions in several of these chapters, most notably in the commercial district chapters, where we just need to clean up the language because right now it doesn't make any sense. It's either not effective, it's ambiguous, it doesn't really tell us what we're supposed to be measuring or looking at. And so there are some improvements there that I think we need to make. So my suggestion here under number 1 is to probably not do all of the district chapters at once, because we'd be looking at about 10 chapters, which is kind of a lot. So I've found previously it can be easier to work with just residential districts and then move on to just non-residential districts. And then there are some other ones that we could consider looking at, like PUDs. We don't do a lot of PUDs here. I think we've only done a couple. And I've never done one, but it is an important thing to include in your ordinance, and you would just review those provisions to make sure that they are, the process is sound and the regulations are sensible. So that would be one sort of set of things to do, so we could spend the next couple months working on just the residential district chapters, and we can move on to just the commercial ones. Maybe when it comes time to eventually approve all this and send it to council, maybe we give council 10 chapters at once, each one being only a couple of pages, but this way when you guys are actually going through them, don't laugh, Marty. When you guys are going through them at the planning commission level and really digging in and making changes, you're not trying to focus on 10 different chapters at a time. You just focus sort of on one thing here and there.
And each one of these, we have to have a public hearing as well.
For each, for each, so we had a public hearing on parking chapter, we had a public hearing on the science chapter.
But we did those the same night.
So we did those the same night. And we'd probably do something similar here. I don't know exactly how we would do it. If we would hold like 4 or 5 separate public hearings, one for each chapter, or if there's a way that we can sort of lump them all into one. I have to talk to our legal counsel about that procedure, but I'm sure we can overcome it either way.
Sure.
So we could do that, look at all those chapters following, looking at the residential, non-residential districts and PUDs. The last thing I think to look at would be site plan review. We spend a lot of time doing site plan reviews, so it might be good for you guys to kind of dive into that chapter, and if you want to make adjustments to the standards and review the process, and just kind of, I find it's educational just to review and kind of think critically about those things and figure out how the process works when things don't go perfectly according to plan, which does happen sometimes.